Hello, everyone. My name is Helen Breña. I'm the proud president and CEO of the YMCA of Southern Maine, and it's my pleasure to welcome all of you here tonight to our annual celebration. At the Y, we pride ourselves on meeting people where they're at, on welcoming their diversity and honoring their dignity. One of the ways we do that is through our financial assistance program. As our mission statement says, for all, regardless of ability to pay. So we try to make sure that no one is turned away from the Y because of financial hardship. Another way we do this is by recognizing and working with the many different ways that people learn and communicate. We believe that everyone has something to contribute to our community and that each has an important story to share. And I mention this part because tonight we're trying something a little new. Pechakucha, or as I learned yesterday, Pikachika, is a presentation format where you show 20 images for 20 seconds apiece and tell your story along with that. The slides advance automatically. It sounds pretty simple, right? Trust me, it's not. We have stories that are being shared today that are so good, so moving, so powerful. We wanted to make sure that we were true to those stories. So we tweaked the timing of the slides a little bit. And I trust that you'll work with us as we learn and grow through this new experience. I'm really, really excited about our speakers tonight. Gia, Richard, Carolyn, and Reza. They bring incredible wisdom, bravery, and humanity to our stage and to our community. It's an honor to share tonight with them. So without further ado, I'd like to kick off tonight with a story of my own. And that story is not me. Nope, not that either. So we're learning tonight, and I'm helping to set the pace for everybody else. I can go into my Y history story. I might just start anyway. I'm going to go ahead and start. So the title the slide that I was trying to bring up was, So You Think You Know Diversity. That's my story. So my story starts that I always thought I was inclusive. After all, I had great role models. These are my parents. They both immigrated to this country, coming from Norway and Peru, destined to meet in New Jersey. There they went to further their medical careers, and they met serving the same patient. Something clicked. They each brought their own unique worldview and valued differences. After all, they were living it. After marriage and a few years in Peru, they came back and they settled in New Hampshire to grow their family. So while we grew up in a not-so-diverse area in New Hampshire, we benefited from worldviews from family and friends throughout our childhood. Peru, Norway, Uruguay, Sweden, Argentina, Poland, Germany, France, India. With that worldview, how could I not be inclusive? So when I grew up and started working for the Y, this is how I saw diversity. And I was proud. Everyone was welcome at our Y. But was everyone really welcome? What happens when we're faced with something unfamiliar, uncomfortable? What happens when we respond to that with fear? I found out. Back in 2013, a transgender woman came to our Y to become a member. Now, for reference, transgender is a term that's sometimes used by individuals whose gender identity is different than the sex assigned to them at birth. She came to our Y and wanted to be a member, and she was welcomed in. But then she said, and I choose to use the women's locker room. And she was told no. To her credit, she pushed back, and she said, no, I choose to use the women's locker room. As you can imagine, there was concern and confusion, and the conversation came to me. I was in a quandary. Of course we want to be welcoming and inclusive. That's who we are. But how will members respond? What if people quit? What if everyone quits and we go out of business? What do I do? I reached out to Sid, a personal trainer at our Y. Sid is a transgender man. He felt safe at our Y, and that's where he chose to change his pronoun from she to he. So I explained the situation to Sid, and I said, what do you think? And his response to me, Helen, you can't not do this. No question, no hesitation, no debate. I knew he was right. Our commitment to inclusion was on the line. But honestly, I was still scared. I spoke with our leadership staff and board members, and I heard their fears. Why would we accommodate a few at the expense of many? What if people quit? Why would we put people at risk? Fears and misconceptions influencing their reactions. So I still didn't have an answer. I then reached out to the YMCA of the USA, and I asked them, hoping that they'd be able to share best practices with me about other Ys around the country who have addressed this. But what I heard, no, you're one of the first to go through this. We don't know of others at this time. But what I also heard is don't make this a transgender issue. This is a diversity and inclusion opportunity. So this is how I now saw diversity, all dimensions of diversity. And this became our guide. We began talking about the different dimensions of diversity, sharing which ones resonated with us, having them be heard and be honored. Parental status, geographic location, non-traditional religions, to name a few. We saw that diversity is everywhere. And so we knew that we needed to value all diversity. And we created our promise statement. That was essentially 3 parts. First, we know that we are the strongest when all can learn, grow, and thrive at the Y. 2, we honor and respect everyone's personal beliefs. We can't judge, and we can't change. And 3, we expect everyone to behave in a welcoming and inclusive way. We also realized that we needed other organizational changes. Privacy was a need that came up across multiple dimensions of diversity: age, diverse abilities, body type, religion, cultural background, and gender. So we created private changing spaces and private showers in each one of our locker rooms for people to use for themselves. We saw the changing community demographics. Multi-generational households were becoming more and more common. Grandparents coming to live with their kids and grandkids for a variety of reasons. Immigrants coming into their new country together as an extended family. So we knew that to best serve them, we needed to change our family membership definition to be all adults and all children living in the same household. And quite simply, we said gender is self-identified. So we took this to all of our staff, all 500 of them. And we shared and we talked and we listened, and it was inspiring. We asked at the end of every conversation, share one word about how you're feeling right now. Proud, informed, ready. We were ready. No, not quite yet. After one conversation, a staff member came to me and said, Helen, if you make me believe this, I don't feel welcome at the Y. Her faith beliefs taught her that being transgender was a sin. So I had to take a step back, and I went back to our promise statement. We believe we're the strongest when all can learn, grow, and thrive at the Y. We respect people's personal beliefs, they're theirs, and we expect everybody to behave in a welcoming and inclusive way. So I shared that with her. We want you to feel welcome at the Y. I respect that those are your beliefs, and I'm not trying to change them. What I'm asking is, can you behave in a welcoming and inclusive way towards all dimensions of diversity, including the transgender community, just as I would ask them to be welcoming and inclusive towards you? She took that, she went home for the weekend, she talked to her family, she prayed about it. That Sunday, her pastor's sermon was about how God teaches us to love all people. So she was able to come back on Monday and say, yes, I can be welcoming and inclusive to all, and I can hold true to my personal beliefs. So now we were ready. We implemented the changes. We shared our commitment to inclusion with the Y community. We received many thanks. I know of one member who left because of it, but overall we grew. The transgender woman who I began my story with, she joined the Y, she used the women's locker room, and she began her healthy living journey with us. We really were proud. We do an annual membership survey, and we ask members, what is important to you about the Y? What do you like about the Y? Some of the things that they shared, it's a place for everyone to feel comfortable. No matter who you are, you're welcome at the Y. Or another one, I love seeing the diversity of ages, genders, races, possibly sexuality of the people using the Y, and letting my kids see that we are friends with everyone. Thank you. And one of my favorites, what I value most about the Y is that it feels like a place where diversity and inclusion are paramount. I enjoy the opportunity to make a momentary connection over a children's swim lesson or another activity with someone I ordinarily wouldn't have a chance to interact with. It's incredibly important for our children to see a model community where everyone treats each other respectfully, regardless of differences. One heroic member speaking out about her well-being needs brought immense change to our Y community. And as a result, we grew. We expanded our understanding of diversity, gender, ability, faith, family structure, immigration. And we engaged in difficult conversations that ultimately brought us closer together and increased our trust in one another. And we're here tonight to celebrate all the heroes who bravely strike out into the unknown in pursuit of well-being, and as a result, make our community a stronger, more welcoming place to live. Enjoy the celebration. Thank you. And as our first speaker, I am honored to welcome up Gia Drew, Program Director of Equality Maine.
Thank you. Okay. Let's make this work. There we go. How y'all doing? Excellent. Well, thank you, Helen. Thank you for sharing that story. Really appreciate it. My name's Gia Drew. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm the program director for Equality Maine. And I have the great privilege to, travel around the state and talk about what it means to be trans, but also how we can recognize and celebrate diversity in the workplace and in schools and communities. And it was really great to hear Helen's story about what the Y has done to make the Y so much more inclusive for members of the transgender community. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about my childhood journey and how I discovered my own gender. When did you know? When did you know you are the gender that you are? When did you know? When did you realize you were a boy, a girl, a man, a woman, or something else? Can you recall that moment in time? Do you remember what year it was? How old you were? No? I didn't think so. But don't worry, you're not alone. Most folks don't know. And many people have never even thought about the very idea. People just accept what they've been told. It's very human to do so. But if I asked a room full of transgender or non-binary people, I'd get a completely different response. There'd be hands in the air everywhere. Oh, I remember, it was when I was 4 and. For clarity, as Helen said, being transgender, or trans for short, just means your gender is different than the sex you're identified at birth. And being non-binary just means you don't identify as either being solely a man or a woman or a boy or a girl. So why is it so many trans people or non-binary people have these memories from childhood like I do? It's probably for many reasons. We were probably corrected when we tried to express ourselves. We probably noticed this difference in our bodies and how we felt. Or we were told we're not who we think we are. For me, I've known since I was very young. I was probably about 3 or 4 years old when I realized I was a lot more like my sisters, Christine and Ellen. Much more than my brothers, Michael, Stephen, Billy, John. I like my sisters' clothes, their jewelry, their makeup, playing with their dolls, cooking, and I especially liked hanging out with all their friends. I'm sure there was something really deep about that, but at that time, that was the most important thing to me. Don't get me wrong. I like doing some traditional boy things. Still do. That's me on the left. And I was definitely praised for doing them. The more masculine, the better. You can never underestimate the power of positive reinforcement. For some reason, I knew my attraction to girly things, feminine things was wrong. I don't know why completely. Did I pick up hints from my surroundings, society, that what I was doing was wrong? Or was I corrected like so many young trans kids or feminine boys? Don't let me catch you wearing that again. I'm sure it was a combination of all those things. Well, it's pretty hazy looking back nearly 50 years now. I do remember a few key moments in my childhood that stick out. You see, I grew up in a house with 9 people, a cat, or a series of cats. There was Sandy, then there was Roosevelt, then there was Ashley, and I shared a room with my younger sister till I was about 12. While it was often chaotic, there were some bonuses living in a full house, especially when 6 of us were going to elementary school at the same time. Getting dressed for school was our responsibility, I guess so my mom could focus on our peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, signing permission slips, and taking care of my dad's shirts. My fascination and/or desire for feminine things continued, but I told no one about it. For years, I stole and wore my sister's and mother's clothes, not really understanding why. I knew I had to keep it a secret, or that's what I thought. And that was very hard for me emotionally. I do remember the first time I wore my sister's underwear under my boy clothes to elementary school. It was in 2nd grade, 1975, in Mrs. Dukakis' class. Wearing them just felt right to me, so much better than my boy clothes. In fact, I wore girl clothes underwear sometimes, even under my Little League uniform once in a while. One time, during a game, I slid into second base, only to have my pants rip at my hip, revealing my sister's underwear beneath. I played the rest of the game holding the rip together with my right hand, terrified someone might see my secret if I had to field a ground ball. Adolescence arrived and I was miserable. If you've ever seen the movie American Werewolf in London, you might recall a scene where the main character transforms from human into wolf. It's portrayed as painful and terrifying. That's what adolescence felt like for me as my body was changing into something I didn't want or understand. As my body became more masculine, I found I needed more time and space to be more feminine. But in a house with 9 people, only 1 bathroom, no locks on any doors, being trans was nearly impossible. So I look for other ways to express my gender. Gender expression is the way we show our gender to the world through such things as hairstyle, clothing, mannerisms, to name a few. It may or may not reflect our sex or gender identity. For me, it was and is still very important. One thing I often did when I was young was sneak out at night and walk around my quiet neighborhood dressed as the girl I knew myself to be. While I felt great about it, it probably wasn't the safest thing to do. I also realized while I was watering the plants and feeding my neighbor's cats once when they were away on vacation, that I could have their whole house to myself when they went away. So guess what I did? That's right. I dressed like a girl. Now for hours at a time in relative safety of my neighbor's house when they were away. It was amazing. I would bring a bag of clothes and even tried on some of my neighbor's clothes. This was heaven. There was no one there to judge me or shame me. It was magical. Their cat didn't seem to mind either. These adventures in cat sitting continued for months. But since I was only 12 and I wasn't very good at covering my tracks, I got caught. At dinner one night, my dad let me know we needed to talk. We met in the backyard. I knew exactly why I was there. I had noticed the Casey's minivan in the driveway earlier that afternoon, indicating my neighbors had come back from their weekend trip. They must have found something out of place. I sat across from my parents on the warm summer night, and I never felt so alone. They confronted me about what I was doing at my neighbor's house, and also informed me they had found my stash of women's clothes under my bed. I could tell they were humiliated and embarrassed. Dumbfounded, they asked why. Why are you doing this? Why are you acting this way? Mind you, this was about 1979, and no one was talking about trans issues. Where were you, Helen? There was little or no information about being trans in the world. No internet, no YouTube videos. Laverne Cox wasn't even born yet. And while Caitlyn Jenner was on the front of the Wheaties box on my kitchen table, it wasn't because she was trans yet or out. It was because she had just won the gold medal in the Montreal Olympics in 1976 and was the greatest athlete in the world, and she was my hero. Not having the language or knowledge to explain myself, I just said, it makes me feel good, and I'm happy when I do it. They didn't know what to do with my response. Well, you're going to have to go apologize to the Caseys. They're waiting for you across the street. Ugh. I walked across the street to my neighbor's house. They were there like my parents said they would. And with my head to the ground, embarrassed, I apologized. And you know what? They were okay with it. And I shouldn't have been surprised. They were more liberal and a little younger than my parents. Linda was a special ed teacher and Rich was a social worker. Using their first names should have been a giveaway. Linda still lives across the street from my parents, and Rich just passed away a few months ago. Their acceptance meant the world to me. It was the first time someone knew about who I was but didn't judge me. I returned to my parents, who were still in the backyard waiting. While they were satisfied with my apology, They were still visibly agitated and confused by my behavior. Well, do you want to talk to someone about this? How about a priest, they suggested. I was too embarrassed to talk to anyone about this. I replied, "Do I have to? I promise I'll never do it again." Thank you.
We told you, powerful stories. Thank you, Gia. Our next speaker, I'd like to invite up Dr. Richard Farmer, the former president of Maine College of Health Professions.
Helen said, "Good luck." Most all of us are a bit new with this particular format of speaking, so bear with me. Good evening, everyone. I'm certainly very proud to be here, and I'm very proud to, since this is a session dealing with heroes, I'm very proud to talk about some heroes in my life. And that is the YMCA people who run the Adaptive Services Program. But before, it's not Halloween, trust me. Before I talk about them, I need to talk about me so you have a sense of kind of who I am, where I'm coming from, and where I'm going, hopefully. There are three, and only three things that are important to me in my life. The first is my spouse of 45 years, going on 46 years. The second are my children and grandchildren. And the third was my career and profession. While unlike men of my generation, I didn't play golf, tennis, fix cars, I resented mowing the lawn and shoveling snow because they somehow got in the way with things that were important to me. So here we are. Well, there they were. I told you we're a little new on this. And for me, as you can tell from my costume a bit ago, my career and profession are highly, vitally important to me. Having obtained my undergraduate degree at St. Anselm's College, my master's degree from the University of New Haven, and my doctorate from Boston University. Career path, what did I do? Well, my interests were in psychology, criminal justice, and then eventually criminal justice. I was a full-time faculty member and with tenure, and eventually president of 3 colleges before my retirement. The last one being the Maine College of Health Professions. One other thing you need to know about me is that I'm an obsessive walker. Having walked more than 35,000 miles in my adult lifetime, it's provided me with an excellent form of mental health. It's a way to take care of all those things that might bother any of us as we see them going down the street going, that's working through. By the way, to circumnavigate the earth is approximately 29,500 miles. So I'm getting there. Then I got sick. It started out with a minor backache problem. Eventually, I went to see my physician, and he prodded and tested and x-rayed and took blood and prodded and took x-rays and decided that I have multiple myeloma cancer. This is a blood cancer where plasma cells grow out of control and start to attack bone marrow. This is an incurable disease with an average lifespan of 5 to 10 years. The multiple myeloma caused me to lose 5.5 inches of height, made me virtually unable to walk. I was in excruciating pain, spent almost all of 2015 staying and sleeping in that chair. And I'm still in that chair sometimes. Eventually moved to a wheelchair, a walker, and finally using a cane. It was 2 years before I could ascend the stairs to the second floor of my home. My treatments included chemotherapy, of which I am still on, a stem cell transplant at Dana-Farber Cancer Center in Boston, which helped me get a different fortification of my blood. Coming home from that event after 22 days in the hospital, our house had to be sanitized, our car was sanitized, and we all had to wear masks. You can imagine the joy of going to Hannaford's with my wife, wearing a mask. There were many moments of glee. You can imagine, after that experience, I felt like, remember the movie The Boy in the Bubble? That's exactly what I felt like. Then the YMCA arrived. My wife was a longtime member. I was not, having worked in places where that wasn't likely to happen. My wife talked to one of the staff members about what we were going through at home, and that staff member suggested that I come in and look at the Adaptive Services Program. And ladies and gentlemen, I can't tell you, but the rest is history. All of the staff were exceptionally helpful. And thankfully, I was assigned to Meg McNeely, who is here somewhere tonight, I won't embarrass her, who carefully interviewed me and determined a plan tailored to meet my unique needs, particularly in terms of my spine. The plan focused on rebuilding balance and strengthening my core strength. Together, Meg and I rebuilt, and we are rebuilding. I was just with her this morning for my hourly session, and yes, I came home tired because she's doing a great job. Not only is she helping me in my physical recovery, but she's also a good coach and a wonderful cheerleader. And I can't tell you how important that is, as she helped me get into the culture of the Casco Bay branch. She helped me feel welcomed and comfortable. For the past 4 years, I've been fortunate to have developed Team Farmer. There they are. My wife, of course, the physician, the oncologist in Boston, Jacob Lawback, Helen Ryan here at the New England Cancer Services Specialists, and Meg McNeely. This is Team Farmer, and they really have been amazing for me. They have helped me get to where I am today. Ladies and gentlemen, Adaptive Services works. It provides training and supervision for the physical redevelopment of the person and provides emotional support so that the person can start to regrow. Adaptive Services provides professional services to individuals of all manner, of all types of physical problems, not just cancer. These professional staff members use their skills, their unique professional skills, to assist others in achieving this high level of functioning, frankly, that I didn't have much before. So please, 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 please help support the Adaptive Services Program. Please share this information with your friends and neighbors, your work associates. Please donate some money so the program can grow. And please reach out to decision makers that you know and ask them for help. And when you meet one of the staff members who's involved in the Adaptive Services Program, give them a big hug, a big kiss. Thank you for the opportunity. This is what they're going to do to me, to speak with you tonight. And I will say, my life is a good one. It's surrounded by my spouse and family and many friends. I choose to be positive and to live a meaningful life as long as possible. I'm okay. My family's okay. I pray every day to ask for God's help, and I take every opportunity to be of help to others. I'm okay and blessed by those who I know and who love me. God bless. Cheers. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Farmer. I've heard his story before. He shared it with our board of directors, and it's powerful every time. Our next speaker is clearing her throat. Rabbi Carolyn Braun from Temple Beth-El.
I have to say that the real hero here in terms of me is the Y, because I think my congregation and my students would be thrilled if I could speak in only 400 seconds. And I think that you are the only people who have gotten me to do this. So I will give it a try. What an honor to be with all of you. When do I go? I was a hidden Jew in my own house, even though everyone in my family was Jewish. We came to California during the gold rush in 1849 and from Hungary and Russia in the 1920s. We were culturally Jewish. My mother would make Jewish bacon, totally burnt so we shouldn't get trichinosis. And she put clam juice into the matzo balls because it tasted good. We were slightly paranoid about calling too much attention to our Jewishness, and we were politically engaged. We protested the war, got out the Democratic vote, and followed Pete Seeger whenever he was in town. When I was 10, I got religion. I prayed nightly from a prayer book I found in the library and lit candles on Friday night in my room. My parents let me attend Hebrew school. Much of the time, I was a little more serious, though equally obnoxious than my peers. In the 6th grade, I convinced my class to make Hanukkah decorations instead of Christmas ones, and I refused to salute the flag until the war was over. I was a pretty typical teenager, but still religious. My boyfriend and I enjoyed cutting Hebrew school class to make out in the romantic darkness of the sanctuary. Uh-oh, I'm in the wrong place. During college, I began thinking seriously about the rabbinate, or at least immersing myself in Jewish learning. That's my boyfriend and I. During college, I began thinking seriously about the rabbinate, or at least immersing myself in Jewish learning. In 1978, during my junior year of college, I announced to my parents that I wanted to become a rabbi. They looked at me aghast. The fad that they were sure I went through was no longer a fad. They didn't have to worry, because in 1979, after a long and contentious battle, the conservative movement refused to ordain female rabbis. Some suggested I become a reform rabbi, but I felt comfortable in a more traditional environment. It wasn't only the rabbinate I wanted, but a way of life. After graduation, I worked for and studied with a male rabbi at MIT Hillel, the Jewish student organization. He was a fabulous Judaica teacher, and I was a bored part-time secretary. He never said he was opposed to female rabbis, but he wasn't encouraging. His wife had been a member of an early Jewish feminist group called Ezrat Nashim, who had fought for equality both within conservative Judaism and society. I don't know many who supported my journey. Secular feminists felt that Judaism was too patriarchal. Secular Jews felt that the rabbinate was filled with zealous blowhards, and society was, and still is, wrestling with equality. In 1981, I left MIT to begin a master's program at the Jewish Theological Seminary, the same place where my male coworker was going to become a rabbi. I spent my first year in Jerusalem, where once again I was a hidden Jew. Outside of my school, no one could know my plans. Inside of the school, though, I was emboldened. There were 40 of us studying at Neve Shechter, and I consciously made myself visible as the men. I prayed 3 times a day with them, I studied with them, and most important, I took on the obligation of wearing a prayer shawl, a talis, and tefillin. The head of the school, staunchly opposed to female rabbis, admired my determination and consented to take me to the Old City to buy my prayer garb. It would be scandalous to sell those items to a woman, so we said we were buying them for a boy just about my height. I still wear that talit for weekday services, and I expect to be buried in it according to tradition. It was in Jerusalem, surrounded by people entrenched in a system that excluded women in the most important places, that I learned how personal relationships can overcome philosophical divides. I was told by faculty and peers that while they completely opposed the idea of female rabbis, if I became a rabbi, it would be okay. When I left Jerusalem in the summer of 1982, I was confident I wanted to continue my education at JTS. Then, on October 24th, 1983, the JTS faculty voted to accept women's ordination. I was with friends just outside of the room where the vote was being held. We heard arguing, we saw our teacher and supporters storm out, then return. We heard applause, and it was done. 23 of us were admitted in the fall of 1984. By 1988, 6 of us were ordained. I was number 4. I would have been number 3, but the order went alphabetically, and it was my luck to be a B and not an A. But it didn't matter. We were just thrilled to be there. That vote and our ordinations were only the smallest step on a long and not yet realized journey. Classes were tough. Some faculty and students didn't want us there. Communities weren't ready, and still aren't, prepared for those who were formally excluded and then underrepresented to be their spiritual leaders. We had and still have to figure out ways to assert our authority and be paid equally as men. Almost daily, I have to work to overcome implicit and explicit bias against women, against single women without children, and against short women. I sympathize with my LGBTQ peers who also won the struggle to be included, yet fight every day, not only for equality, but for equity. Still, as they say, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. As I look at new and innovative programs developed and carried out by my younger colleagues, I am awed and sometimes jealous. But I remind myself that they are standing on our shoulders, just as we stood on the shoulders of the women before us. If Ezrat Nashim had not held their protests, we would not have been ordained. If we had not been ordained, the following generations could not focus on innovative programs. Our group laid the foundation on which others now build. Where I wrestled with authority, my colleagues have more opportunities to own it, to change its demeanor and pass it off to another generation. When I came to Maine 23 years ago, I was the first female rabbi in the conservative movement to lead a large congregation and the first female rabbi in Maine. That milestone is long past, but there are still issues of equity to be solved. I believe that the divine is behind big surprises. Initially, I worked in hospitals, prisons, and colleges, and I didn't wish to serve a congregation. So imagine my surprise that I have enjoyed serving as the rabbi of Temple Beth-El for 23 years. God's hand is here, just as it was when I was 10, and secretly celebrating Shabbat in my room. 20 years ago, a friend of mine invited me to her weightlifting workout. Talk about surprises. Now I am competing. It has to be the hand of God. I have learned so much from my coach, from my gym friends, and from the weights. All those stereotypes about weightlifters and rabbis have been broken through my personal relationships in the gym. Most have never met a rabbi, much less a Jew, and I have never met such a diverse group of people with and without tats who are so friendly and encouraging. We may have opposite political beliefs, but I trust them with my life. The weights and the competition are equalizers. They teach patience, they teach focus and balance, and they teach me that I am strong. I didn't have to fight to become a female powerlifter. I only have to fight with myself to believe that I can do it. And so I come full circle, pushing the boundaries, creating relationships where they might not have once existed, and being a bit unique. It seems to be my God-given path. Thank you.
I would think everybody would enjoy listening to you for more than 400 seconds. Thank you so much. Our next speaker, I'd like to invite up Raisa Jalali, who has a fan club here tonight, writer and educator.
Thank you, guys. Okay, I do confess, I bribed them with better grades and good food. Thank you. It's an honor to be included in this, and I am ready to go. So, I was born in Kurdistan, Iran, a small town near the border of Iraq called Qasr Shirin, named so in honor of Shirin, the beautiful Armenian queen, and her lover, the poor stonecutter. To this day, my town is called the City of Lovers. Are you impressed? I had a happy childhood. I was the youngest of 9, and being the youngest, I was totally spoiled. My town was peaceful. This was before the Middle East would become a dangerous place. The town enjoyed a slower pace of life. Everyone knew your name and your family and your parents. I still remember its flat rooftops, crowded on summer nights by families, spending the night there to escape the heat. The men played loud games of backgammon, argued politics, and whispered anti-government rumors and news, while the younger women gossiped and chewed on roasted pumpkin seeds. The women in my family, starting with my mother, inspired, mesmerized, and frightened me. Most had magic. I watched healthy babies born at home, for our town had no hospital. Some were healers, mending broken bones, broken hearts, and whose words saved marriages and sharp tongues made the town's men behave. When younger and still tolerated as part of the tribe, I watched the women wait for the men to leave the house before starting to dance, raising their arms upward and waving their hips to the music from the radio. Later, when living in the US, I would giggle to myself when I heard people talking of the oppressed and silenced women in the Middle East. They had not met my family. Growing up, I dreamt of going to America, clutching a Pepsi. Back then, a symbol of America, I gazed at the posters of Hollywood beauties like Elizabeth Taylor and Natalie Wood. Now, don't judge me. I was 11 and already in love. This was when Iran was a US ally and major streets were named Eisenhower and Kennedy. The violent wars were yet to show up. I played outside, chasing a tattered soccer ball and climbing trees to taste the ripe berries and figs. In one family picture, as you see posing with my elder brothers when I was 3 years old, we do look like the Kurdish version of Michael Jackson's family. Jackson 5. Don't we? They look like my bodyguards. I read Ernest Hemingway, John Steinbeck, translated into Farsi, and dreamt of being a writer. But I suffered from a lack of creativity. I was envious of writers living in exile. I thought the good writing had to do something to do with their suffering for being forced out of their homelands and the sorrow of life spent in exile. I thought my mother cooking for me, my father giving me the spending money was not helping my writing. Of course, my writing would improve if I experienced heartache, sorrow, and being broke. If I lived in exile, maybe I could write the all-American, or in my case, all the Kurdish and Iranian masterpiece. But things were changing. The US-backed king was a dictator. Censorship and government informers were everywhere. My family, fearful for my safety, sent me away to India to study. While there, the 1979 Islamic Revolution, followed by the Iran-Iraq War, happened. I became a refugee. Both the revolution and the war happened while I was still in India. Despite the distance, I followed the news closely, for my family lived there. I was worried for their safety. As the war went on and the civilian casualty increased, I lost hope for the town, its inhabitants, and seeing my family ever again. Now, all I had were memories of a home. If I were to close my eyes, I still could see the star in the sky, the large yellow moon, and feel the summer hot wind when sleeping on raised beds under white cotton mosquito nets, fearful of tiny yellow scorpions, which might be hidden in our shoes, left for the night under the bed. My wish came true. I was in exile, but my writing didn't get any better. To write now, I had to create my private words, many words of possibilities, but none I could call my own. Once displaced as a writer, I had to remember, misremember, and reinvent to create fictional places and communities to retrieve what had been lost to the war. In my case, I write to tell stories which could remain untold and to bring back to life people, communities, which have either vanished in the dust of the war or at risk of being forgotten. I write down the whispers and the sighs. My characters can be the worst forgotten people, the displaced and the invisible. But America gave me a new lease on life. I got to read books without any fear. I could write and publish and speak freely. I married, had 2 beautiful children. That's me with our daughter when a baby. As you see, I had lots of hair. Can we go back to the other picture, please? I had lots of hair. I lost all that paying college fees for my daughter and for my son. Life in India was good, even in self-exile. Can I have the next one, please? So life in India, so these pictures are from India when I was a student. They were taken in circa 20th century, maybe, I think. Obviously, Caesars were yet to be discovered. Haircuts must have been extremely expensive, I'm telling you. The mirror must have not been a thing, maybe. But once in Maine, can we go to the next one, please? Once in Maine, I became a community activist, a human rights advocate. At home or abroad, I got involved in social justice causes. I was paying my debt to a community which had given me so much, that had given the country, a state and a community which had given me the gift, namely the chance to rebuild my life. I got more degrees, worked hard to be worthy of the gift. In the 90s, I went to Vienna, Austria, as part of the US delegation to attend a UN-sponsored human rights conference. There I joined human rights activists protesting at the UN in support of the war victims in Bosnia. I visited a few refugee camps, as you see, and I was invited to a meeting at the White House. And we live in a dark and dangerous time. I don't have to tell you that. Fear dictates our lives. We are asked to be suspicious of our neighbors, old and new. But I know somewhere in this big world, there is a boy chasing a tattered soccer ball who's in love with America. Does our invitation to the world's persecuted, the poor, still stand? Will that boy get to see America and experience the joy of living in America? Will we pull away the welcome mat, turn off the lights, and shut the door to the world's displaced and desperate? Would we allow the fear to suffocate us and divide us? But I know this much. America is at its best when we stand and march together. When we come together as a nation, as a state, and as a community, as one people, as Americans, in particular as one hyphenated Americans. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Gia, Richard, Carolyn, Raisa, thank you so much. Please join me in another round of applause. To wrap up the evening, I'm honored to invite onto the stage our Chief Volunteer Officer of the YMCA of Southern Maine, Jenna Klein-Johnson.
Good evening, everyone. As Helen said, my name is Jenna Klein-Johnson, and I am the Chief Volunteer Officer of the YMCA of Southern Maine. We have heard some incredible stories here tonight. Journeys that have brought our speakers across the world and into themselves. Gia, Carolyn, Richard, Reza, and Helen, thank you so much for generously sharing your stories with us. You've provided inspiration for our own journeys and the myriad ways we can help our community, make our community a happier, healthier, and more welcoming place for our neighbors. The great author Maya Angelou said, "I think a hero is any person really intent on making this a better place for all people." As I look out at all of you, I see an auditorium in a community filled with heroes. That's because each and every one of us here has the potential to change someone's life through our kindness, generosity, and intention. Many people are more than familiar with the Y as a gym, but they're not always familiar with our cause, our mission, and the impact that this organization has on individuals. If you fall into this category, welcome. Welcome to our mission. We're thrilled to have you as a part of the Y. Our community is 31,000 people strong. We encourage you to get involved and to learn even more about what makes this such a wonderful organization. Before you head out tonight, I invite you to join us in the lobby to share your stories with each other. We have desserts, coffee, and tea to enjoy as you chat. We also encourage you to take home our annual report. In it, you can read more inspiring stories about everyday heroes and their difference they're making right here in Southern Maine. Thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you for supporting this organization, and thank you for being a part of our community of heroes.